There was another voice heard on healthcare this week, the voice of anti-abortion crusader Randall Terry, the founder of Operation Rescue. At a news conference in Washington, Terry warned that violence could come if, in the end, healthcare reform includes coverage for abortion services.
Do not expect us to betray God and to pay for the murder of our neighbor. If you do, you are deceived, you are deluded. We will not comply. And there will be unthinkable, horrifying ramifications. People will react, whether they react peacefully yet forcefully and with forethought, or whether they react viscerally with eruptions of rage.
As Randall Terry knows well, that rage has erupted many times already. NARAL, the national organization working for women's reproductive rights, claims that over the past 30 years, actions against abortion providers included 8 murders, 17 attempted murders, 41 bombings, 175 arsons, more than 5,000 acts of vandalism, and nearly 14,000 harassing phone calls and hate mail incidents. Randall Terry himself has been arrested dozens of times for leading protests at clinics where women and their doctors were subjected to harassment and intimidation. In 1991, thousands of protesters, with Terry in the lead, were arrested outside the clinic of Dr. George Tiller in Wichita, Kansas. Operation Rescue dubbed it the Summer of Mercy. Dr. Tiller was one of the few physicians in the country performing late-term abortions for women with problem pregnancies whose health was at stake from life-threatening complications or whose infants would be born dead or dying. But abortion foes turned Tiller into an object of hate and violent attacks. His clinic was bombed in 1986, and in 1993, he was shot in both arms by a woman with a semi-automatic pistol. Then, 2 months ago, Dr. Tiller was murdered, gunned down at the Reformation Lutheran Church where he was an usher. After the shooting, Randall Terry said this about Tiller.
He was a mass murderer. We have to say that over and over again. He was one of the most evil people on the planet. Every bit as evil as Nazi war criminals. Now, I know that that offends some people that are watching this, but it is the truth. He was a mass murderer, and he reaped what he sowed.
In demonizing George Tiller, Randall Terry had help from the star of Fox News, Bill O'Reilly. For years, O'Reilly denounced the doctor as someone who would, quote, kill a baby for no reason whatsoever other than the mother has a pain in her foot. That wasn't true, of course, but 24 times altogether, O'Reilly denounced Tiller as a baby killer.
In the state of Kansas, there is a doctor, George Tiller, who will execute babies for $5,000. Dr. George Tiller, known as Tiller the Baby Killer, Tiller aborts thousands of babies pretty much for any reason. I wanted George Tiller, Tiller the Baby Killer, going, hey, I can make more money killing babies now. That a man like that could openly operate in the USA is troubling, to say the least. Dr. Tiller has blood on his hands. I wouldn't want to be these people if there is a Judgment Day.
Judgment Day did come on the last Sunday in May. When the suspected assassin was captured a few hours later, police found a single rose in the rear window of his car, a common marker of the anti-abortion movement. Soon after the shooting, O'Reilly himself came under attack as people started asking if demonizing rhetoric inspires violence. O'Reilly, while condemning Tiller's murder, dismissed the accusations.
When I heard about Tiller's murder, I knew pro-abortion zealots and Fox News haters would attempt to blame us for the crime, and that is exactly what has happened. Every single thing we said about Tiller was true, and my analysis was based on those facts.
Unless the accused killer, Scott Roeder, tells us, we'll never know what was in his head that day, where he got the idea to murder, or how it grew in his mind. There's no evidence that he ever listened to O'Reilly or Randall Terry, just as there's no proof that hateful words lead to violence. But words do have consequences. There's no doubt they poison the air all of us breathe, and no doubt that terrible things can be done by the people who breathe that same air. As news spread of Dr. Tiller's assassination and more details emerged, I thought back to what happened in Knoxville, Tennessee on July 27, 2008, 1 year ago this coming Monday. Here's a report we broadcast a few weeks later, produced by Peter Mariash and reported by Rick Carr. Those of you who saw it then will remember that some of the language is graphic, provocative, and downright raw.
On a steamy Sunday morning in July, a man armed with a 12-gauge shotgun burst into this church in Knoxville, Tennessee, and opened fire. One person lay dead, another mortally wounded, and 6 injured.
The man who walked into this sanctuary on July, he was armed with bitterness. He was armed with resentments.
At first, it seemed like just another inexplicable outburst of violence, until a police news conference the next day.
It appears that what brought him to this horrible event was his lack of being able to obtain a job, his frustration over that, and his stated hatred for the liberal movement.
Why did Adkisson hate the liberal movement? Police said that he told them that all liberals should be killed because they were ruining the country, and that he felt that the Democrats had tied his country's hands in the war on terror and ruined every institution in America. Police said that Adkisson had targeted the Unitarian Universalist Church because of its liberal teaching. Because he could not get to the leaders of the liberal movement, that he would target those that had voted them into office. In the weeks following the tragedy, the congregation and its pastor, Reverend Chris Bice, struggled with what they were learning about Adkisson.
Some have suggested that his spiritual attitudes, his hatred of liberals and gays was reinforced by the right-wing media figures. And it is beyond dispute that there is a plethora of books which have labeled liberals as evil, unpatriotic, godless, and treasonous.
During that recent sermon, Bice told his congregation, some who'd risked their lives to stop the shooting, that he's been reading some of those books.
One book has the title, Deliver Us from Evil, Defeating Terrorism, Despotism, and Liberalism. If that author were here in this room right now, I would introduce him to some good liberals who acted decisively on that Sunday, acted quickly and courageously to stop the terror that came into our church building. I would introduce him to some good liberals who know how to fight terror with more than just their mouths.
Bice says even with the outpouring of sympathy from around Knoxville and across the country, Adkisson's lethal anger has left him angry and full of questions.
People were killed in my sanctuary of my church, which should be the holy place, a safe place. People were injured. A man came in here, totally dehumanized us. Members of our church were not human to him. Where did he get that? Where did he get that sense that we were not human?
Bice admits that no one knows for sure and says that Adkisson alone is responsible for the shootings. But he keeps thinking about some books that police found in Adkisson's apartment, books by popular right-wing talk radio personalities who berate and denigrate liberals. One of the books police found in Adkisson's apartment was Michael Savage's Liberalism is a Mental Disorder. In it, Savage calls liberals the enemy within our country, an enemy more dangerous than Hitler, traitors who are dangerous to your survival and who should be placed in a straitjacket. Like Adkisson, Savage accuses liberals of tying the hands of our military. Savage isn't just a best-selling author. He also hosts a syndicated radio show.
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation.
Savage reaches more than 8.25 million listeners a week. And when it comes to demonizing liberals, he's the same on the air as he is in print.
Liberalism is, in essence, the HIV virus. And it weakens the defense cells of a nation. What are the defense cells of a nation? Well, the church. They've attacked particularly the Catholic Church for 30 straight years. The police, attacked for the last 50 straight years by the ACLU viruses. And the military, attacked for the last 50 years by the Barbara box of viruses on our planet.